Good evening, everyone. Nice to see so many beautiful faces, yeah, familiar faces. I love the reading today. It's amazing how I have three little kids, and I try to teach them this whole ignore thing, right? When people are bothering them, and then I'm in the car driving with them, and somebody cuts me off, and I blow the horn, or I say, "Come on," right? So I don't teach them by example, right? And then our talk tonight, let me pull it up actually. Our talk tonight tied in very well to that reading as well. It's on one of the main principles of Spiritism, the multitude of the worlds. And what we'll learn about tonight, in addition to a lot of things, but one of the things we'll learn tonight is how as a society or as a culture, worlds evolve just like we do as spirits, just like societies evolve, and just like planets will evolve. And it all has to do with what we radiate towards, what we connect with, what we ignore, right? What we let ourselves be aggravated by. So it's amazing how this book always ties in somehow to the reading. And my day today was very difficult. I showed up here today after a very challenging day, and wondering how I would find the strength to keep it together, right? It's just a hard day. And as I walked into the room, to the center, it's amazing when you put yourself in this environment how it calms you. And then sitting in this room, listening to the music, praying, meditating, just being bathed in peace and love that has been prepared for us by our spirit friends, right, and our workers here at the center. So it was a reminder again of this talk and how, regardless of trials and tribulations that we face, we have the ability as individuals and the ability as a society and a collective to raise ourselves up in any given situation and make better choices. So on that note, let's talk about this topic. This material is from the United States Spiritist Council. It's put out as an introductory course. I think there's 12 or 13 of these, I forget. And this lesson 7 has to do with the multitude of worlds. How many of you believe that Earth is like the only planet with life? You don't have to answer, or if you do, I'm not going to judge. But a lot of us are probably not thinking that anymore, right? There was a time when that was the prevalent thought. But the multitude of worlds ties into one of the tenets or one of the pillars or one of the main foundations or fundamentals of Spiritism. We've talked about all of these now, I think, in the last few weeks, last month and a half or so. We kind of went out of order. I think last week we talked about, or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about communicability of spirits, which is last on the list, but here we are talking about the multitude of words. And where does this come from? Is that something that Spiritism created, or did we get it from someplace else, right? Because I think what we'll agree on tonight is most of you that are in a Spiritist center probably believe in reincarnation. You probably believe in eternity of the spirit, right? Eternity of life, this body ending, but my spirit perpetuating, right? Living on. But to do that, right? To live another life, right? To be reborn, to reincarnate, same spirit, new body. We need some place to do it, yeah? So am I going to reincarnate forever here on earth, or will I go to other worlds? Will you go to other worlds? Is what this topic is devoted to in a lot of ways. And here we are with the words, right, from Christ, right? This comes from the Gospel according to Spiritism. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. My Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. Right? And that's from the Bible, right? John. What Spiritism is telling us, right? Remember, when Christ spoke to the masses, he spoke in parables, right? In words and stories that they could relate to and understand, not necessarily in complete language. But now, knowing what we know today as a world, right? We know, right, that the Father's house that Jesus spoke of is the universe, right? Many places, many planets orbiting space, of which the Earth just happens to be one. The most important? No, right? The most intelligent? Probably not. The most enlightened? Probably not, right? But one of many. And that's what the house means, the universe. All right, the Spirits book, question 55. Kardec asked the spirits, are all the globes spinning through space inhabited? And the answer he's given, right, is yes. And contrary to what they believe, earthlings are far from being first in intelligence, goodness, and perfection. And I can think of a lot of situations growing up where that would have floored me. You know, we are raised in a sense. Humans are top of the food chain, right? We're the smartest. We have no predators, right, except ourselves, right? We do prey on ourselves at times. But it's very clear that Earth is just one more place. Look at all those different planets, right? All over the place. So, what's the purpose of the universe? The spirits ask, right? The Spirits book talks about. Since we know that there's 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. What are they all there for? Why do they exist, right? I like how they say if we tried to count them one by one, it would take us 3,000 years. I didn't try, but I believe them, right? I don't believe. So the reason they point this out is there's tons of worlds throughout the universe, and our galaxy, right, the Milky Way, I think it's the second on the list here, is pretty small compared to some. Not the biggest, not the most populated or planet-wise. Just one of many galaxies. So one dot, right, in an array of worlds. So the universe, according to Spiritism, consists of innumerable planets, both ones that we can see with a microscope, or not a microscope, a telescope, right? And as well as worlds that we can't. And if you think about the globes or the Earths or the planets that we can see, we think very easily about incarnated beings, yeah? People, flesh and bone, or some type of material, right? Not necessarily visible to us, but other planets have got creatures or life, matter, that's incarnated, right? But it also, these worlds also contain inanimate beings, right? So we talk a lot about spirits, right? We talk a lot about different zones, different areas, close to Earth, near Earth. Some people call these different, there's always many different ways to define these. But what Spiritism teaches us is these invisible worlds as well as visible worlds are all overlapped, all connected, influencing each other in a lot of ways, or connected to each other in many ways. Not just the planet Earth, as we've been talking, as we were, originally thinking as a society. Man, I'm drawing a crowd. So, I love this slide, right? No picture, because they're making a point, right? Within the universe, there are other inhabited worlds with beings at different degrees of evolution, some equal, others more or less evolved than human beings. And I don't know if that's just a bad slide or if they're trying to make a point. They really wanted us to focus on this, right? We as a society, we as humans, all at different levels ourselves of evolution, right? Interacting with each other, helping each other grow, moving up or maybe falling, not back, but not progressing as quickly as we could. We, just like us as individuals, worlds have the same situation, right? Planets, and we're going to talk about planets very shortly. So here's a very busy chart, right? A very busy table related back to our Father's house, right? From John, right? So here's the Father's house, the universe, right? And it consists of a couple options, right? You have different worlds where that exist in infinite space. We can see those with a telescope. We can see those with our eyes, right? These are the worlds that consist of incarnate spirits, right? What we are, right? We're walking the earth. We are incarnated. And there's lots of worlds like this all over the place. And they're kind of grouped and categorized or clumped together, if you will, according to their degree of advancement. So here on earth, as we'll talk about, right now it's kind of like a world of atonement, where we definitely have a lot of good things going on, but we still have some pain and suffering, right? We're still working to evolve. But that's earth, right? That's our place right now. And most of the people living on earth, walking the earth, are dealing with those things. They're in a similar degree of advancement in a lot of ways. And then you have this different ambiance, if you will, the environment that the inanimate worlds are. So we don't necessarily see these with the naked eye. But those beings, right, have sensations, they feel, they interact, they are imprisoned in the sense they're tied to that existence until they evolve, just like we are, right? We're kind of tied to the earth until we evolve. And the causes of these different variations, whether it's inanimate or visible, is the good and evil that they do, that they commit, that they choose to vibrate with. And as we, as individuals, vibrate higher energy, we will obviously leave the earth at some point. All right, so let's talk about different worlds. Without giving you the answers, well, we'll take the quiz later. Let's take the quiz a little bit later. Let's just first talk about where we're all going to wind up. Let's go to evolvement all the way, right, to pure spirits. Number 5, divine worlds. Do you guys believe that that's our destiny, that we will all make it there? I see a lot of heads nodding. Awesome. Me too. Today, I don't know if I believe that the whole day. It was hard to believe that. Not believe it, but it was hard to think that was going to happen anytime soon. But that is our destiny, right? Born or created, simple and lacking knowledge, many lifetimes ago. God put us here in the same situations, ultimately evolving to where we will reside in a divine world. And what's the definition? The inhabitants are purified spirits, and love and goodness reign, right? There is no negativity. There is no sadness. There is no suffering. People don't hurt each other, right? Total true bliss. So what's the other end of that, right? Let's go to extremes, right? So number 1, which we're not there, right? We've evolved past that. But primitive worlds, right? Evil dominates, right? Intended for the first incarnations of the human soul. For example, the times of the caveman they talk about. So we were all there, right? We were all living in a primitive world when we were first created, as we evolved, right? So these 3 stages in between have different levels of evolvement. We currently, on the earth, are at number 2, right? It's a world of trials and atonements, right? The earth, other places similar to the earth, the energy and the inhabitants, there's still ignorance, and evil still predominates in a lot of ways. So think about the earth, right? And we still have wars. We still have hate crimes. We still look at love that's not our traditional forms of love is wrong, right? There's still states that don't acknowledge love, right, in all its forms. We still allow the killing of unborn children, right? It's still legal in America, and not judging in any way, but obviously hatred in any way or actions not loving in any way speak to ignorance and evil, right? And that's where we are as a planet. We're moving up, though. We're making progress. And at some point here, as we elevate ourselves, we will become a regenerative world where good will definitely predominate over ignorance, right? Where love will be more accepted. And then we become what's called a happy world. Ignorance is practically non-existent, they teach us, right? They tell us. Where we make decisions for the good of society as opposed to the good of the individual. And then we already talked about 5. How many of you think that the Earth is close to becoming a regenerative world? I see a few hands. Yeah, I think we're making progress. I do. And the Spirit's book, the Gospel. We'll read a little bit more about this tonight, where we're getting close to being a regenerative world. We're making progress. All right. So this is another busy table, I think, but it's a nice overview of what we just talked about. And notice the Earth in this slide is closer to the bottom than it is to the top, right? Because we still have work, right? But we're moving up, right? We're definitely moving up. Yes, absolutely moving up. Trying to be more like you. Yeah, moving up. We are definitely not an inferior world. Thank God. Yeah, we have moved past that. Although we are still tied a lot to material things, we are not totally material. Just look at places like what you're in right now. I don't know if a place like this would exist in a more inferior world, right? I don't think we would have people talking about eternity, about eternal life in a less inferior world. We're definitely in a place where we are more advanced. Ultimately, though, there's more superior worlds, right, where life is spiritual. Think about the way I think of this is right now, me anyway, just for me, and maybe you're like this too. A lot of times I'm doing things that are more pleasing to my eyes and my senses than my spirit, right? Because I'm still tied materially in a lot of ways. I worry about money for the bills. I worry about food in my belly. I worry about my hair. I got to fix it just right, But I devote a lot of time, too, to reading stuff like this, to talking here, to studying, right? My wife and I devote a decent amount of time every day. What am I saying? A decent amount of time. Sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, right? So there's 24 hours in a day. So I should say a minority amount of time, a little amount of time in our day. But we read together, right? We pray together. We do the gospel at home with our children. That's an hour a week. So less time is spent on things that are good spiritually, right? More time is spent on things that are pleasing to our eyes and our senses. But every year it seems like I spend more time doing things that are good spiritually as opposed to materially. So I'm making progress. We're all trying, right? So the characteristics of these many inhabited worlds vary greatly depending on the spiritual evolution of the individuals living on them. Spirits who live their physical lives in a particular world are not attached to it indefinitely. Thank God, right? You guys are going to leave Earth one day, right? You're not stuck in Orlando forever, right? It's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, right? But there's progression for us, yeah? And that may come in our next life. It may come, who knows in how many lifetimes. But as long as we are tied to material things, as long as we have that tendency to get really mad when somebody cuts us off, right? Or yell back when people yell at us, right? Until we can get to a point where we can love those people. How many of you are thankful when you get sick? When you get sick? How many are thankful if you get diagnosed with it? Thankful, yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. My English is bad. I'm 51 years I've been in America, and my English is bad. I'm very sorry for that. Yeah, thankful, right? But how many of you, let's say you get diagnosed with cancer tomorrow, or you have a stroke tonight. Are you thankful? No, right? We're terrified of stuff like that. But I watched a documentary recently. I watched it twice. I watched it last night again. Very short. I think it's called Going Home. It's a guy named Ram Dass who is a spiritual leader. Different. It depends on what decade you look at. He was either a visionary or a little crazy. But anyways, it doesn't matter. I'm not praising the guy or the way he lived, but I was enamored and impressed with something he said in this video, and it ties into this this involvement of us in society. This guy, who was an elaborate speaker, a prolific writer of self-help and improvement, spiritual development type stuff. If you Google his name, there's lots of stuff, lots of books. Later in life, right, he had a stroke, One of his hands is twisted and distorted. He doesn't talk as well as he did. He can't write anymore as well as he could. And he talks about being totally dependent on other people. And in this moment of realizing that for the rest of his life he would be dependent on people, he thanked God for his stroke. He thanked God not for the stroke itself, but for the isolation and the dependency. It made him go within. He could no longer go out. He could no longer go to the world. He could no longer be this speaker and direct people or influence people in that way. He had to go within. He was forced. He was tied to this body. And he said, as a result of going within and his stroke forcing him this, he found grace. He thanks God every day for the grace of his stroke. I cried. Even the second time, I knew it was coming. I still cried, right? If I had a stroke, I'd probably still be mad, right? Maybe not now, because I have an example. I don't know. But the reason I mention that is this whole talk, right, and this whole piece that we're talking about has to do with our attitude and our actions. How do we react to the world? Right? How do we react to our fellow man when they're mean to us, when they're bad to us? Like this bad day I had today, right? It's all about stuff that I have to face, right? It's happening, right? It's here. Years in the making, but it's finally happening. How am I reacting to that? Do I pray for these people, right? Am I thankful to God for this challenge? And in a lot of ways, I can see why it's happening. So anyways, I won't belabor that point, but as we individuals go through these challenges, right, independently, but then collectively as a group, as a planet, as we start to make better choices, and we can thank God for the grace of our stroke. We can thank God for the people that persecute us, because they teach us patience, they teach us kindness, they teach us to love our enemies, right? When we can get to that point that Christ taught us, not taught us, showed us the way he lived, when we can become like that, more of us like that, then this world, Earth, will evolve and be more regenerative, and then more happy, and then more blissful. Make sense? Let's get there, right? All right. All right. Only 2 more hours, okay? We're going to take a break in just like 5, 10 minutes. I'm kidding. It won't be that long. So how do we leave the earth, right? And, you know, we're leaving the earth. Is it always in the right direction, yeah? So there's merits and demerits this slide talks about. We leave the earth when we evolve to a point that the earth is too low vibrational energy for us. Right? That's one way to leave. We also leave the earth because we refuse to stay at the same level, right, as the rest of the planet. Think about an example of this. Not the earth, because I don't know about where spirits that couldn't make it at the earth, right? They didn't keep evolving and go backwards. But think about the Egyptians, right? Great society, very smart, very ingenious, right? As the story goes, those spirits found the earth because Christ basically, look, you guys aren't growing with your other planet. And I forget the name of that planet. Somebody remind me. Thank you, Capella, right? Capella was evolving technologically, morally, moving up, right? They were advancing, right? Becoming a happy world, I think, right? Well, these spirits from Egypt, these guys that just weren't going with the program, Christ invites them and basically says, look, we're going to Earth, right? And you're going to have a chance to grow and evolve, right? But they left Capella. They were demerited or I don't know. What? They fell? Downgraded. That's a good word. Yeah, I like that. They were downgraded. So they're the same, right? Their spirit, their morals, they didn't go backwards, right? But because they weren't growing at the same pace of their society, of their world, they came down to earth where they fit in a little bit morally, right? But technologically, intelligently, they were definitely advanced. So anyways, that's an example. So we, as individual spirits, can go to more evolved planets or perhaps less evolved planets. If I continue to make the same mistakes over and over and my vibratory state doesn't keep up with the Earth evolution, I could very well go down to, I don't know, what could be a downgrade from Earth? What do you think?
Well, it could be a place without the internet.
Oh, bite your tongue. No Facebook?
No Facebook
Oh.
whatsoever.
Nossa. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, my God. I have to speak English on Thursdays. I know, I'm sorry. Hey, I'm smiling now, though.
Yes, you are.
I'm like, I'm back, you know? All right, so they talk about in Genesis, these collective emigrations or immigrations, right? Where like the Egyptians can emigrate down, or new races are created, right? Creating these different races, these different types of humans, and think about not just Earth, but all these different planets, right? Diversity, coming together, growing, all these different worlds, and it happens, and that's how we all evolve, is through this mixing. So this slide talks about the parable of the sower, and most of us have heard this, but I'd like to read it because it'll make sense when we get to the next slide. It says, a sower went out to sow seeds, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep, and when the sun rose, it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. But some seed fell on rich soil and produced fruit 160, 30 times what was sown. So when you think about that, again, a parable, right? Christ spoke in a parable about seeds, about plants taking root, about fruit being born, right? A crop coming out of it. How does that equate to our involvement? How does that equate to where we are in our personal journey, right? I mean, I read this thing a few times a year, maybe more. I hear it from other people, and I'm still amazed at learning something different from this every time I read it. Maybe because I'm changing, right? I'm evolving. But look at this, how Spiritism kind of breaks this up. And you don't have to say it out loud, but which one are you? Yeah, which category would you put yourself in? And I'm a mix between two of these, I think. I go back and forth depending on the day of the week, right? Or the phase of the moon, I guess. I don't know. What's that? Do you think so? But look at that, a packed soil, right? Obviously the goal is the bottom right, good soil, right? People who listen to the teachings and try to follow them. They try to understand the reasons for life and why we should practice the goodness of our fellow human beings. That's my wife, right? But I'm biased. I love her, right? She's an angel, if you ask me. But she reads all the time. She studies, and she tries to figure things out. Me, I ignore stuff, right? I read, and it touches a little bit, but then it gets too touchy-feely, and I got to walk away, right? So that's why I don't know. I think I'm not always this guy. But my point is, there are some of us we devote so much time to study, and not just study. We really, really try every moment of the day to put it into practice, right? And that's the bottom right. That's the good soil. And then we have the other extreme, right? People who listen to God's word but disregard it. They're looking for material interests, which are symbolized by the birds, right? They listen, but that's not me. It doesn't apply to me. I don't believe. Sounds good, but that's utopia, right? I haven't been that guy in a long time, thank God, right? Stony ground. People who listen to God's word and want to follow it, however, they are too eager and create blind faith without a rational basis, so they don't create roots. I'm not that guy anymore either. I got roots, thanks to this place, thanks to my wife, thanks to some really good people that inspire me and mentor me, right? I'm not that guy anymore. But this guy, this thorny ground, I fall into that category sometimes, right? The thorny parable, right? People who listen to the gospel and even think it's important, but preoccupations with money and power represented by the thorns kill any initiative to achieve spiritual understanding. And I'm not that guy a lot, but there's moments in my life, and I'm sure you can relate to this, where as much as I know, as much as I study, I'm still driven by ego and pride. Right? I want to win. I want to succeed. Right? I want to make money. I want to grow my business. Right? I don't want to see Livia. That's a joke. That's a joke. But but you know what I mean, yeah?
Yeah.
So, some days.
No, really.
Oh, really?
No,
You wait. She needs a tissue. She needs a tissue. My point is, there are times when, as much as I'm doing well, I'm doing good, there are times when it gets thrown out the window, and I'm all about material things, right? And coming here saves me from that. And I told you that when I walked up here tonight. Today was a miserable day, right? But just being here brought me back. And I'm always happy to see you. But there's times when I know if I see this place or if I put my thought into it, I feel guilty and like a hypocrite because I didn't live right that day. And that's what I mean by that. Because there's guilt, right? But I spend less and less days like that. Does that make sense?
yes.
Awesome. Good.
You're not alone.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
if we think that we're going to be hypocrites because we are trying to do it, sometimes we don't. We don't. That's where the guilt will be the thorny,
Exactly.
the thorny ground, and then we will suffocate
Exactly.
our effort.
I agree. I agree completely. And like I said, I'm definitely don't spend a lot of time in the thorny ground, but I want to spend more time in good soil. That's where I want to be more often.
But we are in transition.
Yes, we are. I
We are
agree.
very much in transition, and then it's very dangerous for us to feed the guilt because we are all here in the same boat.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think there is not one single person who is seeking to come here on a Thursday night that are truly in the perfect soil or the stony ground. But we are
Back and forth on the ball.
back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it's gonna be like that maybe for a few lives.
Maybe so. I can think back just 2 decades, 3 decades.
Of course, you.
Right? I'm not even talking about 3 lifetimes. I'm talking 30 years ago. All right? I've seen the change in this life. So let's hope it continues, yeah? All right. Thank you, Livia, for your input. All right. On this slide, I think it's kind of a downer, but I think what they're trying to tell us, right, is if we look at the universal humanity, right, and we talked about the earth, divine, and we talked about inferior worlds, right, and the earth is kind of just below the halfway point, right, and I think that's what they're trying to tell us, that afflictions outweigh happiness on the earth, right. They compare it to a suburb, right? Think about suburbs, right? A lot of times in suburbs you find a lot of the same type of people in the same suburb, right? Because they're socioeconomic or geographic, whatever it is, right? They kind of congregate together. Hospitals, right? Full of people that are afflicted, right? They're sick. They're trying to get healthy. A prison, right? We're all tied to these material bodies in this prison on earth, right? Where our spirit has to work, right? Has to be influenced by the choices our mind and our body makes. And then just in a healthy place to some degree. But all of these things, right? Suburbs evolve, right? Or they knock them down, they build new ones. People get healthy and they leave the hospital. Or they die and they leave the hospital, right? And they evolve, right? Prison, your sentence usually ends, right? Unless you're really bad, I guess. And then, then you stay there, right? So maybe that's not a good analogy. Because I promise you, we are all going to get past our sentence here. We will. But anyways, I think that's the point of that slide. Can you think of a better interpretation of that slide? Oh, okay, good. All right, so the law of progress. We talk about this at least twice a year, right? It talks about, this is from the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 3. As living beings progress morally, so the worlds in which they live progress materially. Get that? As we progress morally, that means as more of us live better, right? More like Christ taught us, right? Material things improve, right? Which is interesting, right? Because we talk about the dynamic there, right? If we were to accompany a world during its different phases, from the first instant the atoms destined to its construction began to agglomerate, we would see it traveling along on a constantly progressive scale, although these steps would be imperceptible to each generation. And isn't that true, right? From generation to generation. We could go back in a time machine, right, 200 years ago. It'd be amazing, right? But think about what's happened in 50 years. It happened, a lot has changed, but we kind of grew with it, right? So it's less of a shock. So St. Augustine told us that. So the earth is a planet of tests and atonements, right? And what the Gospel according to Spiritism in chapter 3 tells us is the time has now been reached for one of these periodic transformations, which will move the earth upwards from a world of atonement to that of a regenerative planet, where people will be happy because God's law will reign. And they don't tell us exactly when, but they say it's coming, right? And I don't know, some days it feels like we're close to that, and then you have crazy stuff happens, and you wonder, are we really getting there? But if you look at the state of the world today, compared to 2 centuries ago, 1 century ago, we're less violent. I know it sounds crazy, right? Because there's still violence, but we are less violent today than we were 200 years ago. We are more connected than we were 200 years ago. So we are making progress. So what's the next step for Earth? And that's going from this atonement state to this regenerative state, right? And what's different, right? So whatever the inhabitants like. So just because we move towards this regenerative state, we're still going to be subject to the laws of matter, although we'll be tied less to matter, right? Our direction, our drive will be more spiritually based or more love based, but we will still be tied to matter. We'll still have flesh, right? We'll still have bodies. We're still going to experience sensations and desire, but we're going to be free of these muddled passions. And I tried to look up what muddled passions mean, right? And I think what they're talking about there is these passions that drive us to hurt other people out of selfishness. Thank you. Man, this guy, you are good. You are good. Less selfish, right? Still tied to matter. Still tempted, right? But less selfish. We're more loving. Thank you. And we're definitely free of pride, envy, and hatred. Doesn't that sound blissful? Not being prideful, right? Not having an ego. Wow, amazing. Definitely, everybody's going to acknowledge God and believe in God, right? But there's still going to be trials, right? Life is not going to be trial-free. And the possibility will exist that your spirit, right, you could fall back to a world or a planet of atonement if you don't keep up with the rest of society or the rest of your planet. So, you ready for the quiz? All right. Who wants to tell me the number associated? I can't believe I'm looking up the answers. This is terrible. Just to be safe, I don't want to be wrong, But before the talk, you could see the answers down below the slide. But I think we'll all have pretty good luck with this. How about this? How about I ask you to tell me what number 1 is? What do you think? Number 1, similar to the Earth. I'm sorry. You got on the left side. You're at primitive worlds, right? Yeah, I was going the other way. So primitive worlds is number 3, right? Where evil dominates, intended for the first carnations of the human soul. Absolutely. How about worlds of trials and atonements? Which one's that?
1.
Man, you guys are good. Oh, are you taking notes?
No.
Yeah, similar to Earth, where ignorance and evil still predominates, although intellect and technology are well developed. How about regenerative worlds? Which one is that?
5.
Yes, where good and understanding predominates over ignorance. Absolutely. And what about happy worlds? Which one's that? I heard it. Yes, I heard 2. Orbs where the good outweighs evil. People live for the good of society and seek progress together. And then finally, what's divine worlds?
4.
Yes. The habitations of purified spirits where the good reigns completely. Amazing. That's our destiny, all of us. So, to wrap up, I will simply say that wherever you find yourself, right, in your struggle, in your trials, in your journey to evolve, wherever you are, remember there's going to be good days and bad days. And you have the ability to create a new canvas every morning, right? Every moment. Your reality right now is defined by, obviously, choices you've made. You put yourself exactly where you belong, right? By the choices you've made. But right now, we have the ability to choose differently if we've been going the wrong way. And I would encourage you to simply never give up. Always believe that everything we need is within our reach, and that we're not alone, and we have help if we would just let ourselves ask and receive. So thank you for your time and attention. And more importantly, thank you for lifting me up, because I walked in not such a good place today, and I feel great now. So thank you for helping me feel better. I really appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you.